Ceri Jones.
Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks for the invite. Back by popular demand.
Well, obviously. Well, it's the first time we've had a chance to catch up after my trip when me and Alan Rees came up to see you at the end of April, the first of Derwent to Chatsworth. Have you been back there?
Oh, I've been back quite regular, Ceri. Yeah, well, weekly, to be honest. It's for me, it's this time of year, this is sort of my trout time, especially coming into Mayfly. Well, we're in Mayfly now, although they're not showing in mass numbers on the River Derwent at the moment. But then in summer months, I tend to switch. I'll be in Iceland chasing salmon. And then by the time I come back at back end of the season, I'll fish a bit of trout again, but then I'll drop onto grayling and pike and maybe even saltwater. I'm busy fishing all year, but this time of year specifically, sort of March, April, May, June, usually set aside for trout.
I remember you mentioned that on the previous podcast. So have you had any Mayfly there yet?
I fished on Sunday and it was Baltic, Ceri. And that river's cold anyway because it's released from the dam, Lady Bower. So obviously it's cold when it comes over and we've had loads of rain and it's just never really warmed up. We haven't had any. What we could do is a settled spell of warmer weather, and I think we'd see a lot of surface action. I had a few on Sunday on surface, but they weren't rising everywhere, and it was those odd spasmodic rise.
Yeah.
They weren't constantly at it, or you couldn't really target a rising fish because they weren't rising in the same place. They were just popping up here and there.
Yeah. Well, the last time I chatted with, when was it last? I think it was episode 178 for people who haven't listened to it yet. I did a chat with Matthew Fletcher up there, who was the River Keeper. And he was telling me it's usually cold water there because it comes from the bottom of the dam, doesn't it? So even the nice weather, you probably get cold water there.
Yeah. It's I can remember you and Alan, you were studying water, and you said,
it was.
Bang on, it's cold in here today. And if you remember, we went straight on nymphs early at morning because I just knew that there'd be no surface action or there wouldn't be very little chance of pulling anything to the surface to take a dry fly. So, and we'd only made a couple of casts and we were lucky enough to hit into some nice fish. So,
I wanted to come on to that, to chat about the technique you use because it was cold. And we didn't realise how cold it was actually till we actually started wading in. So it's obviously that the fish were on the deck and they were down deep, right on the bottom. And so there's rainbows in the Derwent there as well. So, you hit a pocket, I suppose, and you concentrated on an area and you had a few fish. But the method you used was interesting. I could see you were fishing the Euro nymph or the French leader, and then you were pulling these fish out. Now, I've done a little bit of that in the past, and in some of the rivers here, you do tend to lose the point fly a lot because it's quite bouldery and there's snags. But I noticed, I was watching you fishing, because I didn't fish in the morning, I just watched you and Alan, and you weren't getting snagged at all. And it wasn't until actually you showed me after that you didn't actually have a fly on the point, did you?
No, because it's single fly only carry through summer. So, and that water was quite fast if you remember where we were. Yeah. So to get the nymph down quick, what I usually do is drop shot it. I'll usually put a piece of shot on point and then tie a dropper in and use a single fly just above it. So for me, that means my drop shot is bouncing the bed of the river and my fly is presenting perfectly just above it where they're going to be looking. So it's worked really. It's been a really successful method for me. And sometimes even in winter, when we're allowed to use two flies, I'll still drop shot in really fast water, but then put two smaller flies on two droppers above.
Yeah. There's less chance of snagging, obviously, then as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, and it's worked really well for me. It was just something that, I mean, other people might have used it, but it was just something I come up with to so I could use more weight to get my fly down quicker, and I can only use one fly. So I just thought, yeah, I'll drop shot this, and I thought about putting it drop shot on the dropper, but then I thought I'm going to struggle with my fly snagging the bottom. So I always do it the other way around: drop shot the bottom and then tie my nymph on the dropper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd never seen it done. It's such an obvious thing when you think about it to do.
To be honest, Ceri, we're forever learning. We're always learning. That old saying, every day is a school day. And, other week I were out on river, and we talk about putting micro slack in, when you're casting a dry fly so that you get a nice drag-free drift. And there's all sorts of casts and manoeuvres you can do to try and achieve that. I put a leader on that was too long, extended it, and it just won't turn over. It was presenting brilliant. And I thought, this might be a way forward. So I put this leader on, and it was actually just leaving me some micro slack on end when I was presenting with a spare cast. And I thought, perfect. So playing and discovering, I think it helps you grow as a fisherman.
Yeah. Without going over the podcast I did with Matthew, we was fishing this stretch of Chatsworth House, and we fished a couple of beats during that day. So how long is that stretch we fished?
The old river for Chatsworth is 4 mile double bank.
Right. It's an immaculate setting, though, isn't it? I mean, like...
Oh, it's absolutely stunning. I mean, they come here and they make films, and there's always events going off, but it's just such a stunning building in the background.
Yeah. There's like deer walking around you in the woods, and you got the pheasants. Yeah. It's quite a relaxing place to be. And in fact, we had 2 days, and the following day I got up really early, it's about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I just walked around with the camera. Got some lovely pictures. I'll put the pictures up on the podcast, actually. But it's it's something special. But it's a season ticket. It is it? You either pay on. There's probably a 3 to 4 year waiting list to become a member, and then you can invite. You have so many tickets a year, and you can invite guests. The only other way you can fish it, Ceri, is to book into one of the properties. So you can either stay in one of the cottages on the land, or you can stay at the Cavendish where we had our meal. Yeah. And then they allow you to pay at an extra cost the following day to be able to fish the river. Yeah.
That's the only way. That's the only way you can fish it.
I want to give a big shout out and a thanks to the Cavendish Hotel for putting me up there and allowing me to fish the river. And it's quite a hotel as well, isn't it? It's
stunning. It's stunning. That area in general is absolutely beautiful. For anybody who's never visited, it's worth coming just to have a look around it. It's stunning countryside and rivers.
Yeah, I could actually see Chatsworth House from my room.
Yeah, the house, the windows on the house, they're all gold leaf. And I can't tell you the exact figure, what they paid for it, but it were into the millions what they've just, over the last few years, paid to have all the windows really gold leaf.
I did actually go there a number of years ago. They had a game fair up in Chatsworth House, and that was the last time I'd been there, but it was nice to be able to give me the opportunity to fish it, because there's not many places you can fish the rainbows.
No, they're stocked on the Derwent, and they are stocked on the next beat down, which is the Peacock. But the Peacock has got they've got a stretch of the River Wye, and they're wild rainbows. And I think it was back in about 1890s they were put in there, and they're wild. It's a wild strain of rainbows.
All right, that's
on the river. That's on the Wye.
Right.
On the Peacock. Really interesting stuff.
But it's nice to fish the rainbows in the river. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I do like both. I like browns and rainbows. You can't for anybody fishing Chatsworth, you cannot take a brown trout now. They've tried to stop that. Well, they have stopped it over the last couple of years, which I agree with, because some members like to take their share of fish, and they don't know whether it's a wild brown or a stock brown, and you're never going to let your own indigenous species, multiply and get a bigger head of fish in that river if they keep getting tapped. Yeah. So I'm glad about that. But they can still take a rainbow. They can take two rainbows every time they fish if they want to, and they'll restock it accordingly through season. But like a lot of rivers now, Ceri, Itchin, Test, all these big rivers are stocked.
Yeah.
Because when people are paying big money to fish for the season, they want to catch fish.
Yeah, and in fact, when I was chatting to Matthew, the stock quality are so good. There was a guy, I think he said he had a brown about £6, and it was the record for the river or for the stretch, and on Chatsworth, and then so they cased it, and do you know what? When they didn't say anything to him because he thought it was a wild fish, but it wasn't until he passed away they actually said he was a stock fish, he was a brood fish, but he was so good, no one realised he was a.
There's a good header. We've had quite a few. Bertie, Bernard Smith, my cousin, well, it's actually my mum's cousin who I fish hell of a lot with. He had a nice barbel out the other week, which were well into double figures.
He was with us, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Did he had
a beautiful barbel into double figures, and a guy had one last weekend as well. I've had a couple in double figures. On an nymph. You got it. I got it on a 2-weight Euro nymphing rod with about £3 line on.
Yeah.
I was running up and down river for an hour trying to land it. I actually turned up at river that day, and it was coming down like chocolate. And I hadn't fished for a while, and I was desperate to fish, and I thought, I'm here now, and you know what? I'll get in and give it a go. And it was about, I don't want to be in there half an hour, and I hooked it. Yeah. And I thought, I'm glad I got in now.
Going back to the day we fished it, after we broke for lunch, and when we started back then, we went to a different stretch, didn't we?
We moved upriver into Park.
Yeah, beautiful. I loved that pool. Well, the old stretch.
Stunning.
Yeah. Now, what I did then, while I was there, I didn't fish straight away, did I? I just had the cameras, take nice pictures. Then I could see fish moving, rising. So I thought, because I'm not a lover of French leader or Euro nymphing, to be honest. So then I thought, right, I got to get my rod out now. And I got back to the van, got my gear. I had, I don't know, it must be about half dozen fish in an hour or two. Yeah. But what was nice, I had a nice wild brownie as well amongst them.
Yeah. Stunning. Yeah, I can remember it was stunning.
Yeah, and it's nice because it wasn't a lot of scale, not so much scale you could say, but it was just a little tungsten bead, single, just cast across the current, and they were like banging it. It was a good afternoon.
Yeah, we used to call that pool Duffer's Pool because it would always.
Don't tell everyone that, no.
But no, I'm gonna turn it on its head here. It used to be like a really easy place to catch fish, and last year we changed its name to Pro's Pool because we couldn't buy a fish in it. So
that's
it's
more
funny.
Like it.
Yeah, it's funny how river changes. One year there'll be a certain run that is always stuffed with fish, and you can go and pick fish up there. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, it's like somebody's flicked a switch. But we have big lifts on that river, like 5-meter lifts. So I've seen like boulders under some weirs, the size 6-7 foot square, and I've seen water move them. You've gone back to fish that pool, and you thought, "Wow, Jesus, that power in that water has just moved that." And then in other areas where it's been old in grailing, it might have turned to like a silty bottom because it's washed a lot of sludge or sand in or whatever, and they'll move. So the one thing at Chatsworth, and I actually do like it, every season, well, we fish it all the way through winter anyway, but you go back at start of season and you have to start searching again because the riverbed, it just changes. When you look in the park, if you look in trees, you can see debris, and that's the debris that's got, when the rivers come up, what's got washed out.
It's amazing to think the fish can stay in something like that, isn't it? But they do.
Well, I think they'll move, or they'll either tuck into the side and try and hold. But I think that's when they get moved about, and I think that's why we have to search and rediscover, where the line. But I enjoy that. I enjoy some days going on my own just with a dog, and starting right at the bottom and just working up. And I usually carry 2 rods, like a dry fly setup and your own nymph rod. At this time of year, if I can, I'm more wanting to take them off surface if I can. But yeah, I'll walk for miles and miles and just sit, watch, wait, and just try and discover new areas where there's fish line up.
As we finished off the afternoon and we decided to call it a day, we sat down and I was just saying how I enjoyed the day, got some great pictures as well, but I was disappointed that I didn't quite have a nice fish, like a 3 pound plus. Because I knew they were there, but it would have been nice. And then you said, follow me. So we actually got up and you took us then to the village of Baslow.
Yeah.
Is that the top of the water?
That's right at the top of the beat. Right at the top of the beat. Yeah. So that's where our border, that's where it begins and ends for us.
Right. And the reason you took us there, little did I know, is because there was a good head of rainbows there, because some people would maybe throw some bread in or whatever. So they semi-tame and wild, I guess. But I just went in. I went with Bertie, because we walked down through these, not the woods, through a graveyard and then down a banking. And this is where I went head over heels. I grabbed this because it was a bit of a drop. It was about 4 foot drop down to the river. So I grabbed on to this tree. Little did I know, the tree was rotten. And the tree broke as I held onto it. Boosh, I went down. I threw the rod to make sure I didn't break the rod. But luckily it wasn't that deep. It was about 18 inches. But
good move, because it was my rod.
Yeah. I think you could hear me go down, couldn't you?
Can I just say, the 2 worst people to be around on a river, if you're ever going to have an accident, is me and Bertie. Just do not have an accident if we're there. So
no sympathy.
I don't want to. No, none whatsoever. A couple of years ago, I went down this bank, went out of the tit, up in air, fell in the river, up to the top of Waders, and he shouts up to me, "Is Rod all right?" So last year, he was wading across the river, and he fell in, and he was swimming. And I got it all on video, and I sent it in with some background music. So yeah, just a tip, if you fish with us again, don't have an accident in front of us with the world's worth.
Well, what happened next made up for it, actually, because
it did.
we just waded out halfway, and he was showing me where some of these fish are lying. Fair play, first cast, and I never thought I'd have it on the first cast. Up this fish came, took the dry, and eventually came to the net, and he was all of 6 pound. I was over the moon then. A lovely rainbow. He's been in there a while.
Absolutely stunning fish.
Yeah. And then if that wasn't enough, then a couple of casts later, I had another one.
Yeah.
So not to be too greedy, we actually got some lovely pictures and called it a day then.
It was good fun, and it was just icing on cake for a great day, to be honest.
It was, yeah. And you mentioned the rod. This is something I want to come to. Because he was a Mackenzie FX2, which you've actually sent me one to review, and to be honest, I absolutely love it. Now, what is your involvement with Mackenzie?
So, a couple of years ago, I've just finished with Guideline, and I've done 10 years with them as an ambassador pro staff, and I got plenty going off, and I just thought I'm just going to row my own boat. And Scott approached me, and I said, to be honest, Scott, I've had a few offers already, and it's not really what I want to do. He said, I don't want you for pro staff. I want you to be part of the design team with myself, Ian Kirk, and Andrew Toft. So then, if I'm not fishing, I'm casting a rod, Ceri. So that's of interest to me. So he says, I want you to come on board, help with marketing, see what you like, what you do, and help in design team. So we at the moment, I'm working on a new Euro nymphing rod. We're working on saltwater predator rods for 2025. So anything to do with new products coming out, we're working on new lines for 2025. There's a lot happening at Mackenzie. It's
clothing as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, clothing's out. I've got clothing on now as we speak. It's got a full range of clothing from base layers, mid layers, puffer, and waterproof jackets. Well, I know everybody's done layering system, but this clothing's made of. It's got graphene in.
Yeah.
So graphene has the ability to store and redistribute heat. So on a warm day, it can cool you down, and on a hot day, it can heat you up. It's really exciting. In fact, that day I had it on at Chatsworth, you were all complaining about cold, and I think I only had a base layer and an hoodie on.
Yeah.
And then the jackets. There's been an hold up with jackets, but they're here, I believe, back end of this month, early next month, and they've got graphene in, and they've also, the waterproof jacket has been independently tested, and the reviews that's come back is unbelievable. So looking forward to putting that to testing field. And it's also got a recall chip in the hood, so if you got washed down river, they can actually track you, or if your jacket washed down river. Yeah. Yeah, it really does look smart.
So the missus knows where you are then?
Exactly, yeah. I'm cutting mine out.
Yes. So you were saying graphene, because there's graphene in this FX2, isn't it, in the rods?
Yeah, this is second generation graphene. This was one of the first projects I was involved with when I first came on with Mackenzie's. Moving from the FX1, which were the first generation. Mackenzie's were the first company to ever use graphene in rods. I see there's a few more bringing it in now, but we're now on a second generation. And everybody that takes FX2 is absolutely blown away with it.
Yeah, it is. I've actually got a graphene rod. Snowbee has done one, which is a really lovely rod. But I have fished, I got to say, hand on heart, I have fished with some lovely gear, Loop, Hardy, Orvis, some of the big names, and they're all great rods, but they don't come close to this FX2. And I just spent a month in Ireland, right? And I've showed it to a couple of anglers I fished with, and they've all been super impressed with it. So it's definitely a winner. It's without hands down. It's light, it's crisp, responsive, and powerful, all in one. And there's nothing out there to match it. There ain't.
It's very stable. It's very stable.
Where can people who, it's all well and good for me to say this and tell people, but where can they try them out?
These shops, Mackenzie's do deal with quite a few shops. I think Farlow's, Sportfish, Glasgow Angling are the ones that spring to mind. But Scott's very good at sending rods, if they pay a deposit on it or pay for a rod and to try and test. Or even when we're at the game fair, I'm demonstrating with Scott at game fair in July. If they're near Blenheim Palace and they want to come along, they can cast up full range.
Yeah.
And all clothing order there as well. So
what I'll do in the podcast, I'll leave a link to his website and contact details so people can contact him as well then. I'm supposed to. Yeah. I had a chat with him before I went to Ireland, actually. And we sort of penciled in. I'm supposed to be going up to Inverness to see him, to do a podcast and fish with him. But I don't know if that's going to come off. I got quite a bit on. And he's a busy guy as well.
Oh, yeah, it's an hell of a way as well.
I know, it is, isn't it? So,
I'll tell you what might be an idea. Come to Game Fair and do a podcast there on a night when everybody's gone home.
What's the date for that then?
But it's the last weekend in July.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The Blenheim Palace. So Scott's demonstrating. I'll be demonstrating. And then I'm also doing a speech in theatre on rod and line selection because it's such a minefield for people setting out. And even people that have been doing it for a while. So, I'm going to do half an hour a day doing Q&A on line and rod selection.
Well, it's guaranteed to put a smile on your face. It's one of those things, you cast with it and you just grinning from year to year.
Yeah, I did a review for the journal on the 12'7", which I'll be fishing in Iceland next 2 months, July and
that's right.
August.
It's in this issue.
Yeah. And it's honestly, it's a wonder of a rod, absolute wonder of a rod.
So you say Iceland. When are you going?
Going July for a trip in July. I come back. I'll be doing game fair, and then I'm hosting a trip back out there in August.
So this is a hosted trip as well in July, or just pleasure?
No, I'm going to do some work because this is on the East Ranger. And I spoke to Pete Rippon, and I'm going to look at the early season because potentially we're going to be running some early season spear casting workshops with fishing integrated into it. And it'll be really good value. Iceland's expensive at this moment in time because because Russia's got no traffic. Do you know what I mean? So everybody's looking at places like Iceland, Norway. I mean, if you want a big fish, Norway. If you want numbers of fish, then they usually head to Iceland. But I spoke to Pete Rippon, who owns and runs the East Ranger, and he said potentially one early season and one late season. So going out to do a bit of scouting, have a look at the river at early season, and then we'll probably put something together.
So you've already got people booked up for the August one, or not yet?
Oh yeah, it's full. It's full. Oh. I think we've got. Well, I could, if somebody come on and said I'd love to go. I could go back to lodge and ask if there's rods available. We've actually got most lodges do a 4-day rotation. So you come in at the morning, you fish the afternoon session, then you'll do 3 full days, and then you'll do an half-day session on your last day, and then you leave. But we've actually got 6 days this year.
Right.
And it's hardcore because you're up, you're on, and that's why a lot of people share rods, Ceri, because you're up and you're on water at 7, and then you come off that beat at 1, you have a 2-hour break, then you're back out at 3, and then it's 8, 9 o'clock at night before you get back for a shower and then sit down for evening meal. So, I usually survive on about.
That's a good way of doing it, sharing it though, isn't it?
It's a good what? Sorry?
It's a good way of doing it, sharing it. Sharing
rods is, yeah, because if you work it out, I'll be going to Scotland in September, I'm on Junction, and I'll be going to Tay in October, hopefully. And if you have a full day on a river in Scotland, you don't get on water while 9 o'clock at the earliest. It's usually 10, between 9 and 10.
Yeah.
Then you stop for lunch. Then it's a 5 o'clock finish. You're usually allowed to fish on a lot of beats, but there's no way you get twice as much fishing in one day in Iceland as what you do in one day in Scotland.
Wow.
Hours-wise. So sharing a rod makes sense to a lot of people, you know what I mean? Because they might not be that fit they can do 12 hours a day fishing. So they'll share a rod with a friend. Of course, yeah. I've never known anybody go to Iceland though and be disappointed. Lodges are first class. Foods like Michelin star stuff. Rooms. It is really a fantastic experience. I get a lot of guys coming and going, I just want to do this. And ladies, I've got a lady on the trip this year. I just want to do this once. I just want to experience it. And then they go and they're like, you know what? I think I'll kill a bit more of my fishing and I'll come next year. And I've got guys now this year, they're probably on about the 4th or 5th year.
I've actually been twice fishing for trout then, fishing the Lochs and a few of the rivers down south, the Tungaflut. And it was like, the price is totally different. Fishing for trout and sea trout there is like a quarter or less the price than the salmon rivers. And to be honest, I had salmon as well, on the trout rivers, the known trout rivers. So it's a great place there.
Oh, it's a stunning place. I've got clients that are wanting to go and fish for trout. And so when I'm out there this year, I know a guy, Dagger, really well, and I'm going to have a word with him and see if I can get a trout trip up for these that want to go and fish for trout.
You need a photographer to do the promotion, you do?
Yeah. Do you know any good ones?
I haven't a clue.
Yeah. And I love destination fishing. I fish 12 months a year, Ceri, for different species. And I love fishing different destinations and sometimes places where nobody's been or tapped into it and just go throw a line and see what, see if you can get anything. But last 12 months I've done 2 saltwater trips to one to Dubai, fishing off a boat, and then I've been to Maldives this year. And I think the things you learn from fishing for different species, when you stack them all together, sometimes I'll use spear casts on saltwater. So in fact, I've just written an article about it for Lough magazine.
All right.
So for the FFI, it's a digital one.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I just think you take different things. I'll use some things in trout what I might have took from salmon, or something from salmon that I might use in trout, and I think it makes you a more all-rounded angler.
But fishing, I can tell you're obsessed with this in your blood, and it's like me. Do you know what? The last almost 6 weeks I've been in Ireland fishing most days, and I've come back now to reality here, and I feel numb. It's like I want to fish.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're on a downer.
Yeah, I am, and I'm counting the days now until I go away again. I'm going to the Faroes in July. I haven't a clue what it's like, but apparently it's really, really good. There's a lady, Monisha Kirchner. She lives there for 6 months and lives in Germany as well for 6 months. So I got an invitation. It's all booked now. So I'll have to let you know what it's like.
I would imagine fishing will be pretty good in that.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine, yeah. I understand Alan is coming up to see you as well next week.
I mean, it's a fair old trek for you guys, but and Alan Foreman, he said, any chance, anytime, even if you want to come up with Alan again, Ceri, you're welcome anytime.
Oh, I will be. And if I come up to Inverness, I'll do a detour on the way and call in then. Yeah.
Because it is late. It's always late at Chatsworth, and we just need a bit of warmth. But we're still picking them off. But if we had a couple of weeks sunshine, that river would be absolutely bouncing.
Well, this podcast I'll put up now this weekend. So anyone listening who's interested in doing some mayfly fishing and think, they've missed the opportunity, well, there's always Chatsworth to go to.
Yeah, in fact, Matthew, and we have River Keeper, who you did a podcast with the other week. I have conversations with him all the time, and we actually call it June fly. It never turns up well, June. What's your go-to mayfly pattern?
I've got 2 dry fly patterns. One is like a CDC. There's a guy, Baslow Shields. He's devised this pattern, to imitate the green. How it works over there, and I guess it's the same all over really. The greens they call them in the day, they hatch out maybe 11 o'clock to like 2 o'clock, something like that. And this particular fly is really good. It sits in the film a bit better, not so high in the water to imitate the greens. And then there's a guy then, Jimmy Turrell. He's got a detached bodied mayfly. Both those patterns, I won't use anything else for dries. No. There are wets, but for dries, that's what I would use. But the
you use what you're confident in, don't you?
Yeah. And then in the evening, then the spent. It's quite a thing actually, because they hatch in the day, and then they go straight to the trees, and then they'll wait then till conditions are right to go out to the lake to lay their eggs. And it's quite often that they don't do that, and there were trees which we looked on the shore of the islands covered in dead mayflies, that they didn't go out. Right. Strange, isn't it? But when they're out, then the sport is incredible, and just the traditional spent pattern is class. But
the reason I asked you, a good friend of mine, Malcolm Coakley, has been in fly fishing industry for years. First person I ever went to Iceland with, and we're having a conversation one day with him on the river, and he said, "What are you using, mayfly?" And he pulled this daddy long leg pattern out, and it was tied by a guy called Alistair Robgent, who's got a shop. I think it's down south, just off Test or Itchin. I think it's Stocksbridge, something like that.
Yeah.
And he said, they're a daddy longleg pattern, but they get taken as a mayfly. This is I've fished, and I've seen them leave mayfly and take this pattern. Really? And it's the ugliest looking fly you've ever seen in your life. But I've used it that much now, and I can't tell you how much success it's brought me. It's unbelievable.
Wow!
I'll give you some when you come up next time. I'll give you some.
I'll have to look at that.
They sell something ridiculous, and it was designed by the gentleman we've just named, Alistair Rob Jenkins. They sell ridiculous amounts of numbers out of that shop because Malcolm actually supplies shop with them. I'll show you them when you come up.
I'm always up for looking at new patterns. I understand you do some courses as well. Have you got anything lined up?
Yeah, so I mentioned I'm doing some in Iceland, but I'm working with a shop at Bakewell called Malin and Green, and we've put in this first course on the River Derwent Peacock Stretch on the 10th of August, and it's going to be a spear casting workshop, and then they're going to have lunch, and then they'll be allowed to fish on the river for the rest of the day, which is the only way you can get on that river is to be a member. So it should be a really good day, and just enlightening people on what spear casting does for you, Ceri, because you know how tight it was at Chatsworth. If you can't spear cast or make quick angle changes on a river like that, you're going to struggle to cover fish. And I see it at Chatsworth all the time. I see guys, that river's 4 miles long, and I see guys walk into places where there's backspace and they can't cover fish that are in pools that are on tree lined or big banks. So spear's the way. If you learn to spear cast, you'll take your catch rates to another level. So that's what that course is about. So spear casting at the morning.
If anyone's interested in that course, how do they go about?
Yeah, so if they contact Malin and Green, and they'll give them all the details of the course. I think it's up on, it's been advertised on my social media. It's on Malin and Green's social media and the websites as well, I believe. So yeah, if they want more details, just call, ask for John or Marie, and they'll give them more details on the day and costs, etc., what to expect.
Brilliant. Well, I'll have a look at my calendar now to see if I can make it to the game fair.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see you.
Well, thanks again for coming on, and again, thanks for the invite to coming up.
It was fantastic to get you up, mate, and you're more than welcome to come up again. And hopefully next time we'll be on dry fly. Well, all right, Paul.
Many thanks, Chris. I'll speak to you soon.
No problem.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a patron. We will get weekly podcasts and access to over 170 episodes, behind-the-scenes photography to go with each episode, plus other exclusive content and prizes. To become a Patreon, visit patreon.com/casting with Ceri Jones, or you can find the link on my website, castingwithcerijones.com. That's all for now. Tight lines, and may they always be up in the wave.